What's up, guys? This is Nick from Arch City Poker, and in today's video, we'll be continuing the poker hand review series with today's topic covering barrel monkeys. So, guys that essentially are pretty much always going to barrel, no matter if they represent a strong value range or not. They're going to bet when checked to, float too often. I'm going to kind of show you guys how to take advantage of their leak and how you can maximize your EV against them, essentially. I do want to say before I get into this real quick, I apologize for the lack of videos the last 3 to 5 days. I've been quite under the weather. I also want to say that I'm going to be doing more hand reviews and trying to focus on more on that coming up. I think players and you guys are looking for more of that kind of thing. So I'm going to probably try to go more towards that and not as much of the How to Beat Live Low Stakes series, not as much of the Poker 101, like the conceptual stuff, but more hand reviews. And not that I won't do those, like I said, but it's going to be more hand review based and getting more into that. The grind, that series, the daily session series, I'm going to get the next episode of that up at some point in the next few weeks, waiting approval on the live casino vlogs, but I'll be doing live hand analysis with that. I also want to say that I know I can be quite the talker sometimes, so I'm going to try to really make sure I'm more efficient in getting these videos a little shorter than they need to be, or I guess not as long as they've been going, and just try to get to the point a little more quickly. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the hands. It is a 2-5 live session, same player in both hands. I open, and we started this game 6-handed, and I believe we were actually 6-hand for both these hands, so I open pocket aces under the gun for 4x. That's pretty much my standard in these games. Players are calling raises with too wide of a range versus this sizing, so I think this is totally fine. And the player to my immediate left, the player I have labeled as the barrel monkey, flats, and we see a flop heads up. 10-6-3 rainbow, a flop that I think exploitively against most players in the pool, I would just go ahead and value bet. I think against tough players, I would need to check sometimes for balance. I think this hand works very well as it doesn't need really any protection. I think I'd pretty much mostly be betting my 10x and like my pocket jacks pretty much most every time. I think aces, kings, and queens don't need as much protection though, so I think you can definitely consider check call. With players that are barrel monkeys or guys that will just go ahead and bet when checked to, I think this works really well on the spot. I don't think he understands balance or range versus range interaction that well. I think he knows enough about the game to understand that when he's usually checked to in this player pool, he's going to go ahead and just bet because he'll get a fold most of the time. I think when I check to him here, I represent missed broadways and like big aces. So I think it's a really nice spot to check to induce against this player. And with the barrel monkeys, he's not just going to bet flop, but probably turn also. So I do check, and very interesting, he overbets the pot, which is really weird to me because let's say he had a hand like Jack 10. I don't really know what he expects this to accomplish. Like, worse hands are not going to call. I think if he's bluffing, if this is a really expensive price on his bluff, I think his bet should be around half pot, at maybe at maximum, like the highest bet sizing. It's just a really weird bet. My hand is obviously way too strong. This bet turns pretty much my entire range into bluff catchers, even though I pretty much know most of the time this is the best hand. I don't think he would overbet the pot with a set here ever, so I feel very confident about this. I don't want to check raise, though, because I don't think I'm getting called often enough, and I think on the turn he's going to go ahead and barrel. So I do just call. And the turn brings a 2 of spades, pretty much a brick. I think this player could have 5-4 suited in his range, but it's obviously very rare. I check, and he decides to barrel, which I think you guys aren't surprised about at this point. He does size it down a little bit, but he does bet 100. Again, I don't think a check raise accomplishes a whole lot at this point. If I felt like he would stack off light, I would go ahead and probably just get it in, but I think I do better by letting him possibly just jam the river. So I call. And unfortunately, not the best card in terms of, I think at this point he could put my range at like pocket nines, pocket eights. Maybe my perceived range has ace king in it. So I think he would show down a lot of his pairs that are something like maybe jacks, maybe 10x, that's not 2-pair on the river, he may give up with some of his bluffs now. So the thing is, he might not, though, because he is the barrel monkey. So I don't think leading, though, does a whole lot. Like I said, I don't think I do get like pocket jacks to call. I don't think any worse pair than the king is calling at this point. So I think my best bet is to hopefully let him stick the rest in here. And I check, and he checks behind and shows pocket sevens, which, to be honest, I think he played very poorly. I think he has not a very good understanding of showdown value. Like I said, his flop sizing is way too high. I think he should be betting this combo on the flop for protection and thin value, but it doesn't need to be that big. I think he can bet half pot or less and do fine with that. So, interesting spot. I think that it's a nice spot to show how you can get the maximum out of barrel monkey. When a lot of his range is going to be weaker and stuff like this, I'm not sure I get 2 streets of value out of him. I might, but I think I do better by letting him just put the money in and letting him think that I'm very weak. He even said after the hand that he never expected me to show up with aces in the spot. So, yeah, I think it's a good spot to show you guys that, and hopefully you can start implementing this kind of strategy into your own game when you face a player like this in this spot. So let's quickly move on to the next hand. As I said, I'm trying to get through these a little more quick, guys. Barrel monkey opens under the gun, same exact game, same session. I have king jack of hearts in the big blind. I think that against a more loose open, this could be a 3-bet. However, this player is decently snug with his opening raising ranges. I think he's definitely more snug in early position. He is the kind of player that will limp a lot of his range, so I take this as actually stronger. My hand's too strong to fold, though. I'm getting a good price out of the big blind, so I do go ahead and decide to flat. And the flop comes 6-5 deuce, a flop that should not hit his range that hard. I think checking is fine here, but I actually like leading these because the king and jack block a lot of his value range with kings and jacks. And there's a lot of turns that I can go ahead and bet profitably. I think any 7, any 3 or 4, any heart are usually cards that I can bet and get him off of a lot of his range. So I think it's a nice spot to lead when, if he does think about my perceived range, I definitely could have some hands like 6-5. Maybe he thinks I'm even loose enough to have like 2 pairs like 6 deuce or 5 deuce, but I can definitely have all these sets. I think that I could have 4-3 suited, possibly, according to, or I guess like what my perceived range could be. I'm not saying that I would have those hands necessarily, but I do think those types of hands that hit this flop texture well play really well against his under the gun opening range. So I actually go ahead and do lead for, and I don't really need the evaluation here to show you guys, but I do lead for about, about 2/3 pot, a little bit less. I think that's totally fine. And he goes ahead and calls. And beautiful card on the turn. A card that against an unknown or a player that I think is just weak tight, I think I would just barrel this for pretty much pot, maybe even larger, knowing that they shouldn't have really any 3x in their range. And I don't think this player really has 3x in his range, maybe ever. He could have ace-3 suited, but I don't even know if he raises that. I think that might be a limp for him. So the point of the video, though, is how to exploit these barrel monkeys. And this is a spot where you could argue that this is too cute of a line, but I do think that when I check to him, a lot of players just assume weakness automatically again. He sees the donk bet on the flop is weak, and then the check. He may be floating very light here. He may actually have some kind of pair or something, like some kind of overpair, or maybe he just has like ace-king and he's assigned to bet here, but he does go ahead and bet when checked to, and I get that extra $50 in here, whereas if I bet, I think I fold out pretty much his entire range, unless he has like overpair. So this keeps him kind of wide. I think this maximizes the most EV against this specific type of player, and I go ahead and slap him with a check raise. And I think that this is pretty much like the perfect way to play this hand against this type of player. So if you guys have any questions or comments about either of these hands and how to exploit these barrel monkeys, let me know as always. Until next time, this is Nick from Arch City Poker. Take care.